At my niece's birthday celebration, my brother chose to mock me. "You'll always be a loser," he chuckled, oblivious to the fact that I was the one footing the bill for it all. I departed without settling the bill, and soon my phone was inundated with 27 missed calls. I found myself standing before my parents' home, clutching a carefully wrapped dollhouse in one hand and a bag brimming with gifts in the other. The front porch was adorned with cheerful decorations, pink balloons gracefully tied to the railing, and a large, glittery sign proclaiming, "Happy Birthday, Princess Lily." Laughter from children resonated joyfully from the backyard. With a deep inhalation, I pressed the doorbell. The door creaked ajar, revealing her, my mother, enveloped in her familiar pastel cardigan, the sweet aroma of vanilla cake drifting enticingly from within. Yet, the instant our eyes met, her smile vanished into thin air. "Your presence is not desired today." I blinked. "What is this?" Suddenly, the voice emerged from behind her, dripping with smugness, sharp and unmistakable. "This is no place for losers," my brother Jacob remarked, positioning himself beside her with arms crossed, a slow grin unfurling across his face. It struck me with the force of a slap. Before I had the chance to reply, he let out a scoff, tilting his head in disbelief. "Really? Arriving in such a manner? Awkward." He let out a soft laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "Lily appears indifferent to your presence. Perhaps it would be wise to consider an exit before you find yourself in a compromising situation." A familiar wave of discomfort washed over me, reminiscent of the feelings I experienced at every family gathering, every dinner, every holiday. Their gaze pierced through me, flitting to my disheveled hair, the creased fabric of my hoodie, and the shadows beneath my eyes, remnants of countless sleepless nights dedicated to coding. I clenched the gift bag tighter, forcing back the knot that had formed in my throat. "Contribute just a little? Awkward." Lily remains indifferent. A memory struck me with force. Only half a year prior, Jacob had appeared at my doorstep, his demeanor rife with desperation. "Man, I just need a bit of assistance with Lily's school fees," he had said, his tone laced with a feigned modesty. "This is merely a fleeting moment." I would reciprocate that gesture without hesitation. That very night, I completed the transfer of the funds. There are no inquiries, without a moment's pause. And now I found myself labeled a loser? I gazed upon my father. He cast his gaze in my direction, them, eyes flitting away as if unable to confront my gaze. My mother shifted in her seat, a subtle tension in the air, yet her lips remained sealed. It felt as though they had practiced this very moment, as if an unspoken consensus had formed among them that I was no longer a part of this place. The familiar sound of my mother's inevitable excuse echoed in my mind. Should I dare to confront her? "It transcends mere finances, darling. It all comes down to how you choose to present yourself, doesn't it?" In their realm, success was not defined by intellect or talent. It was quantified by tailored suits, extravagant automobiles, and exclusive golf club memberships. Not through endless nights spent unraveling the complexities of code. Not through patents. Not through six-figure contracts from Silicon Valley firms that never necessitated my departure from the confines of my apartment. In their eyes, I remained the same clumsy, disheveled child who never quite belonged. A strange sensation coiled within my chest. Agony, fury, incredulity. The words surged within me, eager to escape my lips. The demonstrations, the fervor, the call for clarity. Yet, as swiftly as the flames had ignited, they extinguished. With a deliberate breath, I released the air slowly. "Very well," I replied, retreating from the threshold. "If that is indeed how you feel." I pivoted, made my way back to the car, and carefully set the gifts in the passenger seat. Yet, just as I was on the verge of closing the door, my gaze darted back to the house, particularly in the backyard. Through the window, I observed Lily, twirling in her birthday dress, her laughter ringing out as she frolicked with the other children. Unbeknownst to her, a flurry of activity unfolded at the front door. In a fleeting moment, I found myself on the brink of reconsideration. Once more, Jacob's words echoed in my mind. That sly grin, that laughter. This environment is not suited for those who cannot rise to the occasion. I gritted my teeth and settled into the driver's seat. My grip on the steering wheel intensified as a chilling awareness enveloped me. For years, I had deluded myself into believing I belonged to this family, that I held significance. Yet, I was not a brother. I was not a son. I was a mobile cash dispenser. It seems there's no room for those who fall short, is there? Very well. Let us observe how they fare in the absence of this individual who has been propping up their existence. For 2 days, I kept my phone off. Silence was what I craved. There are no texts from my mother that induce guilt. There will be no half-hearted attempts to brush this aside from my father, and certainly no condescending, mocking messages from Jacob. I wish to allow them the time to reflect on their choice, to allow them to experience the absence of my presence when I failed to gather the fragments. Yet, as the third day dawned, my curiosity proved too compelling to resist. With a gentle press, I ignited my phone, bringing it to life. 27 missed calls, 15 voicemails, 32 texts. A smirk curled upon my lips. Ah, there it is. I perused the messages that filled the screen before me, perusing the key points. Mother, your behavior is quite perplexing to me. Jacob's intentions were not as they seemed. Reach out to me. Father, let us approach this with a sense of reason. You're familiar with the dynamics of family life. Is this for real at this moment? Mature and evolve. Mother, once more, Lily has been inquiring about you. I let out an exasperated sigh. Ah, so now she acknowledges my presence? The final message piqued my interest. I extend my sincerest apologies to you, Kelly, the wife of Jacob. I found myself in disagreement with the events that transpired. Kindly give me a call at your earliest convenience. That one made me stop and think. Kelly had always possessed a certain quietude, consistently followed Jacob's lead in all endeavors. Yet, there was an unmistakable quality to her message that set it apart. Immediate attention required. Though I lacked the inclination to reach out to anyone, I found myself composing a response. Myself, what prompts your apology? 3 dots materialized in an instant. Subsequently, her reply. Kelly, for Jacob, sanity is slipping through his fingers. I arched an eyebrow. Captivating. I articulate the concept of descending into madness. In this moment, she paused. Then, Kelly, finances are constrained. He had placed his trust in you for Lily's birthday celebration. He has already expended significantly more than we had anticipated, operating under the assumption that you would reimburse it at a later time. When you failed to do so, he erupted in anger. Unpleasant. I let out a snort. Indeed, he did. For years, I had been the unseen safety net supporting him from below, perpetually intercepting him just before he met the earth. This time, I severed the ties and allowed him to descend. I reclined in my chair, my gaze fixed on the half-consumed takeout container resting on my desk. Next to it, my monitor illuminated with an active terminal window, lines of Python code cascading across the display. Prior to this moment, I had been immersed in the intricate process of debugging something of great significance, a source of income that covered my expenses, something of true significance. And yet, here I found myself, entangled once more in the complexities of family drama. An ordinary individual might have chosen to let it be, allow Jacob to face the repercussions of his own hubris. Yet, mercy was not a sentiment I was inclined to embrace. I had a desire to witness it. I yearned to witness his discomfort. As dusk settled, I found myself gliding past the familiar silhouette of my parents' home, merely to observe, not to enter. It was nothing short of magnificent. The decorations had vanished. The pink balloons lay deflated among the refuse, the sparkling celebration of another year of life. Lady Lily of the royal lineage. The banner drooped on one side, its edges frayed and tattered by the relentless wind. Jacob's car remained parked in the driveway, yet the air of smugness had dissipated. Instead, I noticed a flicker of motion behind the curtains. Rhythm. As I lowered my window, a melody of beauty drifted into my ears. Jacob's voice rang out, piercing the air with urgency. I really don't care, Mom. He is intentionally orchestrating this. He seeks to bring me down. I stifled a chuckle. Ah, my friend. You accomplished that entirely by yourself. I was unable to catch my mother's response, yet I could vividly envision it in my mind. The familiar indulgence. The identical misguided justifications. Jacob isn't the issue, darling. Life has dealt him an unjust hand. Absolutely, of course. Then, from the periphery of my vision, I caught sight of Kelly. She sat at the dining table, her face hidden in her hands. Even from afar, I sensed it. She was beyond tired. She had reached her limit. I had encountered that gaze previously, upon my own visage, at the midpoint of the journey. The vibration of my phone interrupted the stillness. Once more, it's Kelly. I responded. Engage with me. With a heavy sigh, She exhaled her thoughts into the air. Jacob is spiraling beyond control. Characterize the state of being unmanageable. He has been shouting at your parents for hours on end, holding them accountable for failing to persuade you to address this issue. His anger simmers, for now he finds himself compelled to act. She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. She exhaled sharply, as if preparing herself for the impending collision. He must now part with his car to settle the debt from the party. My eyelids fluttered momentarily. In that moment, a laugh escaped me. Ah, the sweet twist of fate. The very brother who ridiculed me for my choice of a used, sensible vehicle. The very individual who proclaimed that true men navigate the world in luxury vehicles. Now he found himself compelled to part with his inflated status symbol, having misjudged the extent to which he could siphon off my resources. I reclined in my chair, a slow shake of my head escaping me. Please tell me you captured it on record. I remarked, a smile still playing on my lips. I should have, Kelly confessed. It would have captivated you. Indeed, I am already engaged in that endeavor. She paused in silence for a moment. May I quietly pose a question to you? Embrace the opportunity. What made you endure it for such an extended period? That brought me back to reality. A moment suspended in time. 13 years old. With my back curved and shoulders tense, I leaned over the family's time-worn desktop computer, my fingers dancing swiftly across the keyboard. Having just completed my inaugural program, a straightforward script designed to unravel algebraic equations. At the age of 16, Jacob stepped into the room. With a single glance at the screen, he let out a derisive scoff. Is this really how you choose to spend your leisure time? I radiated enthusiasm, ready to share my thoughts. It serves as a fundamental solution. You enter an equation, and it. Goodness gracious, what a geek. No one is concerned. With a forceful motion, he struck the power button on the monitor. The screen faded into darkness. I gazed at it, rendered speechless by the sight before me. As my mother strolled by, a soft chuckle escaped her lips. Darling, it would do you good to spend more time outdoors. Engage in an ordinary activity for a change. Ordinary. It was in that moment I understood, regardless of my intellect, my family would remain indifferent. In the current era, I ran my fingers across my face, the weight of Kelly's question lingering in the atmosphere. I pondered. I faltered. I believed that through my relentless generosity, they would ultimately recognize my value, that they would embrace me as one of their own rather than a source of endless funds. She completed her task. I released a breath. Indeed, Kelly drew in a quick breath. Indeed, for the first time, I found myself believing her. I gazed intently at the path before me, my grip on the steering wheel growing firmer. I pondered. I faltered. I believed that through my relentless generosity, they would ultimately recognize my value, that they would embrace me as one of their own rather than a source of endless funds. Kelly drew in a quick breath. Indeed, a moment of stillness. Then, I understand. And in some inexplicable way, I found myself believing her. At last, within those walls, a true understanding emerged. That night, I slumbered in regal comfort. As dawn broke, Jacob had taken the decisive step of putting his car up for sale. 3 additional voicemails from my mother awaited me. Each one transitions between. You are causing pain to your family. Your brother is facing challenges. Kindly take the high road. All of them have been erased. As the week drew to a close, Jacob found his car missing. As the month drew to a close, both Kelly and Lily had vanished as well. It seems that when Jacob found no further use for me, he shifted his focus onto her. And what of Kelly? She was far stronger than he realized. She gathered Lily, initiated the divorce proceedings, and relocated to her sister's home. The final message I received from her was straightforward. Thank you, Kelly. And what of Jacob? Naturally, Mom and Dad welcomed him back in with open arms. Yet, with his credit in tatters and his opulent way of life in shambles, he had lost the sheen of the golden boy he once was. So much for the absence of a haven for the defeated. In the solitude of my apartment one evening, I cradled a glass of whiskey while my fingers danced over the screen of his freshly created GoFundMe page. Challenging moments. Merely striving to regain my footing. Every little bit counts. I let out a chuckle and turned off my phone. There is no room for those who falter. It seems he has at last discovered the place that truly feels like home. Jacob's downfall was exquisite. Yet, the most delightful aspect? He remained oblivious to it all. Despite having sold his car, returned to live with our parents, and witnessed his wife and child leave him, He continued to portray himself as the victim, as if the world had betrayed him, as if I had committed some grave offense against him. And indeed, he was furious. The instant my phone vibrated with a message from an unfamiliar number, I sensed it. "Jacob, I trust you are finding joy. You have shattered it all." A sly smile crept across my face. "The number has been blocked." Moments later, I heard the familiar ping of my email. "This requires your attention and resolution. Your actions reflect a certain self-centeredness. You show no concern for Lily at all." Obstructed. Moments later, the doorbell chimed, breaking the stillness. I was already aware of their identity. Initially, I remained silent. Allow him to linger on the other side of the door, much like a forlorn salesman acutely aware that the deal was slipping through his fingers. In that instant, a sudden crash echoed through the air. Thud. Bang. I let out an exasperated sigh. "Take a moment to unwind. I am on my way." As I finally swung the door open, there stood Jacob, untidy. Beads of perspiration glistened on the skin. He appeared more desperate than I had ever witnessed before. "Do you find amusement in this?" He expelled a sharp hiss of disdain. I rested against the doorframe. With arms crossed, "I find it utterly amusing." His eye quivered slightly. "It seems you find pleasure in this, don't you?" "Ah, far beyond your understanding." His jaw tightened. Lily wept as Kelly led her away. "It seems that matter holds little significance for you." I let out a derisive laugh. Lily wept, her heart heavy with the weight of her father's foolish choices that had led to his own downfall. "Please, don't place that burden on me." I blinked. In that moment, a smile graced my lips. "I believe I am unencumbered." Jacob recoiled ever so slightly. Then his expression contorted with fury. "You are a self-centered simpleton." A heavy sigh escaped my lips. "You remain present." Jacob's fists tightened, his chest rising and falling with intensity. Yet, he was not a warrior. He possessed the gift of gab, a master of influence, a destitute soul. At this moment, pleading was proving futile. "This is far from finished." He jabbed a finger in my direction, reminiscent of a stereotypical antagonist from a low-budget film. I offered him a deliberate, sardonic nod. "Absolutely. I eagerly anticipate the continuation of your tale of woe." With the unmistakable grace of a tipsy raccoon, Jacob marched down the hall, his muttered curses trailing behind him like a shadow. I closed the door behind me and let out a breath. What a farce. A week slipped by. Then there were two. Cease all further messages. Cease all email correspondence. Surprise visits are a thing of the past. After a long stretch of turmoil, I finally found a sense of tranquility. One evening, my phone vibrated softly. Kelly, you must take a look at this." A screenshot of Jacob's latest brilliant idea was attached. A post for Facebook, extended and theatrical, brimming with partial truths and tales of woe regarding how certain individuals abandon their kin in moments of hardship. True men do not forsake their nieces merely to make a statement. And naturally, the finishing touch. "All is well, however. I have consistently been the resilient one. I will navigate this journey independently." I almost sputtered on my beverage. Is it the formidable one? The man who subsisted on my finances for years? The individual who erupted in a fit of rage when I ceased covering his expenses? This was simply delightful. I popped my knuckles, smirking as if I were the antagonist he imagined me to be. It is time to bring this to a close. I refrained from commenting on the post. Such a solution would have been far too simple. Excessively exposed. No, I was seeking something more exceptional. A lasting presence. Thus, I opted to send him a message instead. Myself. Resilient individuals do not plead with their younger siblings for financial assistance. Or complain when faced with the necessity of selling their car. Or allow their wife and child to slip away, consumed by their own self-pity. I lingered in anticipation. Indeed, it was as expected. 3 dots emerged, then vanished into thin air. Then it re-emerged, then vanished into thin air. For the very first time, Jacob found himself utterly speechless. Excellent. I placed my phone aside. I reclined in my chair and released a long, measured breath. The end had come. After years of confinement, I found myself unshackled for the first time. And what of Jacob? Indeed, Jacob was beginning to grasp the true essence of solitude. Stillness, the pinnacle of the experience. After years, I found myself waking up to a different reality. Messages soliciting financial support. Voicemails steeped in guilt. Unexpected crises where I was called upon to come to the rescue and resolve all issues. At long last, Jacob had fallen silent. At least, that was my assumption. Precisely 30 days after I dispatched that last message to him, the sound of my phone pierced the silence. My mother. I ought to have realized it would not turn out well. Darling. Her voice dripped with a veneer of insincere warmth. It's time for a conversation. A heavy sigh escaped my lips. I'm already massaging my temples. Allow me to make a conjecture. Jacob is facing challenges. So, you expect me to make it right. A moment of silence lingered in the air. It's not about mending, dear. It revolves around the concept of forgiveness. A brief chuckle escaped my lips. Oh, is that the term we're using now? Refrain from being harsh. She snapped, her patience fraying at the edges. This weekend, we will gather for a family dinner. Your father and I believe it's time for you and Jacob to have a mature conversation and resolve this matter together. I cast a fleeting look at my calendar. Saturday, 7 o'clock in the evening. Ah, so they have even chosen a moment for my public humiliation. How delightful in its convenience. I reclined in my chair, a smile playing on my lips. Allow me to clarify this. Do you really expect me to sit face to face with the same brother who labeled me a loser and threw me out of Lily's birthday celebration? The very individual who has been disparaging me in the digital realm? The very same individual who, allow me to speculate, seeks yet another favor. It's not as you think, she maintained. Yet, there was an unmistakable quality in her voice. A moment of uncertainty. And I was aware. Goodness gracious. I caught myself just in time. He certainly seems to require something, doesn't he? Mother let out a sharp breath. Jacob simply requires a bit of assistance to regain his footing. I let out a hearty laugh. Incredible. What is it now? Yet another vehicle? A dwelling space? Allow me to take a wild guess. He ultimately exhausted his GoFundMe funds. There's no need to be so cruel, she retorted sharply. A smile spread across my face. Indeed, I certainly do. Very well, she exhaled with a sigh. Jacob has been facing challenges in his search for employment. He finds himself in a difficult situation, my dear. He placed himself in that position. He is your brother. And then silence. I allowed it to extend. Allow the burden of my apathy to rest upon her. And then I turned the blade. You were indifferent to my plight when he closed the door on me. My voice was icy. You remained there, allowing him to subject me to humiliation. You allowed him to continue. You remained silent. That seems unjust. I severed ties with her. And now that he's in pain, all of a sudden, we're a family once more? Yet another silence. At last, she let out a deep sigh. So, you won't be joining us? Absolutely not, Mother. I will not be attending. For the very first time in my existence, I was the one to end the call. I believed that was the conclusion of the matter. That my parents would brood. Jacob would wallow in his own despair. And I would return to savoring my tranquility. However, Jacob had a way of being utterly predictable. On that particular Saturday, precisely at 7:42 p.m., the doorbell chimed. Bang, bang, bang. A heavy sigh escaped my lips. I recognized them instantly. I was acutely aware of how this would unfold. Jacob stood on the precipice of desperation, ready to plead. And what of me? I was on the brink of savoring each moment to the fullest. I peered through the peephole. Ah, this promised to be quite the adventure. I lingered at the threshold, savoring the moment before I finally turned the handle and stepped through the door. Allow him to bide his time. Allow him to dwell in his own discontent. As I finally flung it open, there stood Jacob, with his hands tucked deep into his pockets, eyes ablaze with untamed fervor. His lips began to twist into a feeble justification. A sly smile crept across my face. Is there no dinner at Mom's? He tightened his jaw, a silent testament to his resolve. Allow me entry. I rested my weight against the doorframe. What is the reason behind this? His nostrils expanded with intensity. It is essential that we have a conversation. I feigned contemplation. Indeed, it seems so. Negative. I began to shut the door. Yet he wedged his foot in between it. And that was an error in judgment. Very well, I declared. Gently nudging the door ajar, I stepped onto the porch. Speak your truth without hesitation. Then depart. Jacob let out a heavy breath. Listen, my friend. I'm aware that we've encountered our share of disagreements. I chuckled. Oh, is that truly what we're naming it? He shot a fierce glare, but pressed on with determination. I simply require a bit of assistance. Are you well? It stood before me. I folded my arms across my chest. Allow me to take a wild guess. Wealth? His eye quivered slightly. The GoFundMe campaign didn't quite reach the extent you had anticipated. What? I inclined my head. Or did your parents finally reveal that they wouldn't be paying for your Lazia? Enough already. He erupted. cheeks blooming with a vibrant hue. A smile spread across my face. What is the reason behind this? Is there a possibility that I am mistaken? He drew in a breath with sudden intensity. He dragged a hand down his face. Her voice descended into a desperate whisper. I simply require a loan. Is that all right? I arched an eyebrow. Oh, so, am I finally deemed worthy to assist? Jacob gulped, a knot forming in his throat. I made a mistake. Everything good? I understand. I ventured beyond the limits. I gazed at him intently. For a fleeting moment, I found myself nearly convinced by his words. Yet, in that moment, my gaze fell upon it. The identical air of entitlement sparkled in his gaze, the identical anticipation that I would yield, that I would invariably yield, and a smile graced my lips. Oh, my friend, I remarked, moving in closer. I refrained from lending money. His expression dimmed. Wow. I inclined my body forward. I provide funds. In a fleeting, optimistic instant, his eyes sparkled with excitement. And then I brought his story to a close. Yet, solely to those who merit it. The hope extinguished. I struck his shoulder with enough force to send him reeling. You'll find your way, my friend. With no further exchange, I pivoted and closed the door firmly before him. That marked the final occasion Jacob sought my assistance. A week later, I learned from Kelly that he had finally done it. At long last. Secured employment. It leaves much to be desired, yet a position, a paycheck that did not belong to me. In that moment, I found myself devoid of anger. Spite was absent from my feelings. I simply experienced. Complimentary. For the very first time in his existence, Jacob found himself compelled to rely solely on his own strength. For the first time in my life, I felt no regrets about allowing him to fall. Half a year. It had been that long since I had closed the door on Jacob. Ever since I ceased responding to my mother's guilt-inducing calls, having come to the realization that I was not accountable for mending his existence. Allow me to share something with you. Those half a year? Utter tranquility. Cease all requests for emergency funds. Cease the entitled messages. The era of being a walking ATM is over. Merely stillness. Revision. Time slipped away, and as I savored the newfound relief of no longer serving as my family's personal ATM, uncertainty started to seep in. As I navigated the screen of my phone, my fingers danced across the glass surface, gazing at the messages I had chosen to overlook. The guilt my mother inflicts upon me, the half-hearted endeavors of my father to engage in rational discourse, and Jacob's furious eruptions. It was anticipated, yet an unsettling feeling lingered within me. Was I perhaps too severe? I had no doubts about severing their financial support. Indeed, that aspect had been awaited for quite some time. Yet, had I ventured too far in completely turning my back? As I depart from Lily's presence, the weight of that thought pressed down upon my chest. I had consistently ensured that she possessed everything essential for her well-being, not due to Jacob's request. Yet, she was merely a child. She was powerless to influence her father's decisions. Now, she found herself ensnared in the tumultuous clash. I navigated to Reddit. Pausing briefly before composing my post, I took a stand by distancing myself from my entitled brother and parents. Even if it implies my niece may endure hardship, I unveiled everything before me. The years of monetary assistance, the barbs, the sense of entitlement, the prohibition of Christmas festivities, and my choice to ultimately declare that I have had enough. However, I also articulated the uncertainty. A fragment of my mind questioned whether I was inflicting punishment on the wrong individual. If only there existed a method to uphold my boundaries while still remaining present. I pressed the post button and waited. The replies arrived swiftly. You are not in the wrong. Your brother has arranged his betting. Allow him to rest in the consequences of his choices. Your niece is connected to other relatives. She has other sources of support. Your sense of guilt arises from the goodness that resides within you. However, do not allow that guilt to pull you back into a harmful circumstance. A single remark captured attention. Should you wish to support Lily, proceed with it straightforwardly. Establish a savings account in her name, distinct from her gifts. However, do not allow your brother to manipulate you into supporting his lifestyle once more. I released a breath, perusing that several times. That truly resonated. I found no need to plunge myself back into the flames to ensure Lily's well-being. After days of uncertainty, a sense of clarity washed over me for the first time. I reached for my phone. As I scroll through the myriad of messages from Jacob and my parents. Yet, in contrast, I composed a message to Kelly. Greetings. I wish to assist Lily. However, I refused to part with another cent for Jacob. Let us engage in conversation. In an instant, clarity emerged, and I found my answer. How would you navigate my predicament? Could you discover a means to assist Lily while ensuring that Jacob doesn't exploit you once more? Or would you choose to walk away entirely, allowing them to confront the chaos they have wrought? Share your thoughts in the comments below.